UFC Noche main event, a big-time fight, the title fight rematch between a future Hall of Famer, Bullet Valentina Shevchenko, taking on the rising Mexican star, Alexa Grasso. As always, one half of your hosting duo, Craig Allen, Twitter and Instagram, X and Instagram, at Craig Allen FNP. With me to my left, to your right, Tyreek Hill superfan.
Oh, he's good.
At Matt Allen FNP. And Matt, when we look at it, we're excited because the Browns and the Dolphins won today. If you didn't guess, we're football fans for sure. But what we can be fans of is this rematch. Matt, Valentina Shevchenko in the original matchup, a big favorite. You go back and you watch the fight, you dissect it. The first round, Grasso looks amazing, switching her stances, working from southpaw, landing some big strikes. In the second and third round, Shevchenko getting the takedowns, at one point getting her in almost the mounted crucifix position, landing some good ground and pound. But at the end of the third round, the takedowns getting a little bit more labored. And then we get into the fourth round. Shevchenko, she's like a whirling dervish, like Marabdashvili, just going for the spinning shot. And out of the spin, she gives her back and hangs out
with the Spider-Man meme.
Hangs out for just a hair too long of a split second. Grasso rushes to get the back, is able to kind of disable her opponent, get the trip, and then Grasso on the back gets her a naked choke. And just like when you're making pickles, Matt, did you hear the pop on the jar? Yeah, we heard that pop. She was able to get that submission win. So Shevchenko's face, two different colors out of that submission, and the belt is gone. Now, when you look at it traditionally in MMA, especially in the UFC, when you have these title fight rematches, you don't always see the fighter that was the champ go on to win the belt in the rematch. We have seen it recently, though. We saw it with, well, Israel Adesanya when he fought Alex Pereira. And you saw it with Amanda Nunes when she fought Pena in their second matchups. But by and large, it doesn't happen very often. So when it comes down to this matchup, Matt, Shevchenko taking on Grasso. Grasso's 1-1 and won some more. We know that she struggles with the takedowns, although fans will say, wow, Grasso's the better grappler. Grasso's going to get the takedown and get the submission
I want to meet these fans. Just because you have a submission win over somebody doesn't mean that you're automatically the better grappler.
Get ready to read our comments.
Don't worry.
When you do look at this, we've seen Grasso struggle against Barber, struggle against Esparza with the takedowns, but when it's on the feet, she can succeed. However, again, even round 2, round 3 in their original matchup, Shevchenko is winning in those striking exchanges in those 2 rounds, because even though Grasso had that success from southpaw in the first round, she left herself out there, kept her feet back, and overextended on her shots. That not only gave Shevchenko a window to counter, it also opened up all of those easier double legs that Shevchenko was able to land. So we'll see where things play out in this matchup. Again, Grasso training in her native Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, which I mentioned earlier, 1,566 meters above sea level. Shevchenko, she moves around gyms every time, but training close to Vegas for this one. So you look at the fight, Matt, I think, again, another awesome fight. I'm glad it's another title fight in a main event. The last time you had a title fight in a fight night main event, it was Figueiredo Benavidez 2, and it wasn't even close. So hopefully this one's a little bit closer than that. But I know you're excited about this rematch, and I think it's one that's warranted because you're talking in that high air of esteem where we're talking about a future Hall of Famer, but they did that before Adesanya versus Strickland. They did that before Sterling versus O'Malley. They were given those GOAT statuses out there. So we'll see how this one plays out.
This is, and I jump on you every time you say this. They is the promoter of the company, Dana White. And guess what the promoter's going to do? Promote his fighters and say the current ones are the greatest ones ever. So yeah.
If you don't know, now you know.
That conversation's always going to be out there. I'm going to start my part off saying one of the dumbest things I've ever said, but I will defend it. This fight is one where either the champion's going to look great and retain or the challenger's going to win. And you're probably saying, well, yeah, no shit, Matt. Those are the only 2 results you can possibly have in a title fight. But please allow me to explain. For a lot of these title rematches, you're right. Normally, the champion retains and looks great. They just shut the door on the former champion who is trying to make that one last hurrah in the top, not only 15, but just in that title picture. Or the former champion comes in and kind of has one of those y'all must have forgot performances and maybe even gets a finish. And I could see that being the opportunity in this fight, especially if Shevchenko does go for a lot of double leg takedowns because her ground and pound is so good from that top position. And the thing about Grasso is she can't get back up to her feet in the majority of her fights. She goes for a full guard in a lot of matchups.
In that crucifix position that Shevchenko had where you think, okay, Valentina's finished a title fight in this manner. what could happen? Grasso was able to get herself out and back up.
You are correct, but those are positions that leave a lot of wiggle room. That's why people don't use full mount as much as they use half guard, because half guard gives you more control. You're right, crucifix is a dominant position you can get great ground and pound from, but it also gives the opponent a lot of room to at least buck and try to create separation. And yes, Alexa Grasso can do those things, but when she's in those set positions on the mat, she does have a difficult time getting back up to her feet, and she can get her butt caught up against the cage and her back caught up against the cage, and that's a position that Shevchenko can do very well, and she likes that wrist control to pull her opponent back down to the ground. But we talked about this a little bit before we even went on air. Shevchenko's fights were starting to get closer, though, before she did give up the title. It's not like she was the same dominant champion who was going out there getting doctor stoppages and TKOs and head kicking Jessica Eye. Her fights started going not only to decision, but they started getting close by the time that they were done, and they started having you asking, hey, like, is she still the great that she once was? And Shevchenko's the greatest fighter in this weight class's history, no matter what. Probably, a top 5 women's fighter of all time, yeah. Probably. It's a very short list, whoever's in front of her.
Cyborg, Nunes, Ronda, Shevchenko.
Holland.
Yeah.
There, I'd say that's a very sound top 5.
Or so, strawweight, maybe Zhang Wei Li's up there.
There you go. Either way, though, she is probably in that top 5 category, and that's why this rematch is more than justified. I just think on the feet, she is going to continue to have a little bit of trouble. We haven't seen her have that same killer instinct of, hey, I'm going to stand there, bop in the pocket, and then counter with my own shots. She'll move out of the way a lot more often than just try to counter and then respond with her own offense. And I think that if she does do that, kind of gets behind in the significant strike numbers, it's going to be a lot for her to make up in those championship rounds. But even though we haven't seen Grasso in those 4th and 5th rounds nearly as often as we have Shevchenko by any means, Grasso does have great output and great cardio and a very steady gas tank, too.
Yeah, Grasso, it was weird. I mean, 87 to 59 are the significant strikes through 3 and a bit rounds. When you do look at it, it was a 4th round stoppage win for Grasso, who is the champ. Shevchenko was doing a decent job of counter-striking on the outside, getting backed up round 2, round 3. She did land a lot of those shots once it was on the mat as well. But when you look at somebody like Grasso, she had all that success in the world in southpaw at the start. You have to think Shevchenko, along with Pavel and Antonina, they've been...
the dream team.
They've been training that a little bit. And when you do look at a fight like this, again, Grasso's one of those fighters, it's going to be really interesting. And you heard Daniel Cormier say this. I found this really, really interesting. He said something to the effect of, your challenger, they're always bringing the best to the fight. When you're the champion, you're always facing the best version of that challenger. And I thought... except Alexa Grasso's teammate Irina Aldana looked terrible against
But they also say the champion gains 30% when they win the title because it's a newfound confidence in your skill set. So it does go both ways.
Yeah, I thought, hey, I don't know about that. But when you do watch Grasso have all that success, tagging Shevchenko, even from southpaw, landing the right hook, doing really good work, Shevchenko, the one thing that I noticed in that fight, and I've noticed in these last 3 fights, Jennifer Maia gets taken down in 1 round, loses one of those rounds, and then in the fight against Tyler Santos, back and forth, 50-50, split decision, though most thought that Shevchenko had won. If you do look at it, Shevchenko started to back up a little bit more on the straight line, not cut angles as much, be willing to stand in the pocket, but also get tagged in those situations. So when you do look at this matchup, Matt, Shevchenko is slightly favored in the fight. I'd like to hear from
you. The Joanna fight was a precursor to that. No one's going to remember this because she beat Joanna like 50-44, 50-45. Like, she beat her mostly every single round. But in the 4th round of that matchup, Joanna was moving forward. She clipped Shevchenko with a head kick that I'm not going to sit here and tell you it stunned her like crazy, but still, they were solid strikes that we didn't see Shevchenko not be the same fighter on the retreat as she is moving forward. And you're right, I agree 100%. She doesn't move just enough out of the way of shots to respond to their own offense. Now she will just evade the pocket completely sometimes, and that'll be concerning if she has that same game plan.
And it will be. You had Korean Zombie a few weeks ago. 10 straight main events, retires after he fights Max Holloway. 10 straight title fights for Israel Adesanya, loses the belt to Sean Strickland. You see a theme
Never
here?
thought you'd say those words, did you?
Valentina Shevchenko loses to Nunes, UFC 215 at bantamweight for the bantamweight title. Fights Priscilla Cachoeira instead of fighting Nico Montano. That one was not a title fight main event.
Close.
And since then, Shevchenko's fought in 10 straight title fight main events. So when it does come down to this one, we throw it out to you folks. YouTube community tab, almost 1,000 votes. 55% going with Valentina Shevchenko to win in the rematch. The comments here, Matt. Here we go. Chandler Witt, he's out there every week.
He is.
Responding to these comments. I think Grasso takes it again. Maybe a decision this time, kind of like Leon versus Usman. Valentina's getting old, and I think she's been figured out. We got Kent Fitzsimmons saying Gracie takes it by sub or decision.
They're like best friends.
We've got Praduman 1000 saying Alexa Grasso is going to be more dominant this time around. Shevchenko has issues on the ground with multiple fighters, and I think Grasso is going to take her down and get a unanimous decision win. And we got Bill Cipher. This fight is rebound or retire for Shevchenko.
Very well could be.
Grasso made her look like a bum in that fight. That back take at the end, submission came way too easy. Hopefully, whatever back alley gym Shevchenko trains at basic ground defense this time.
That's a funny comment.
Okay, any comment? A lot of the comments I've seen, a lot of the stuff I've seen on Twitter, completely disregards the entire fight, and everybody just looked at the result. And I mentioned this earlier on this card. Headline readers. You don't go out and you read your news, you just read the headlines and you take that with you in your day, because you might have a fun fact and you don't care to learn about the world. Watch the fights.
You're so mad at these imaginary people.
Watch the fights. It's every week with this bullshit. Matt, I have a hard time picking the fight because Grasso looked great with the striking in the first round, and then the wheels fell off in the second and third round, so to speak, because she overextended on shots and got taken down. And then in a moment of flurry where Shevchenko was doing a spinning shot, she got taken down, got her back taken in that second, and then got herself submitted and wasn't able to get out of that choke whatsoever. Could barely even fight it.
I'm glad one of our commenters did bring up the second Leon Edwards-Usman fight, because I do think that's a fight that you are going to learn a little bit from, right? It was a rematch that a lot of people felt was a fluke win the first time around, right? Usman was so dominant up until that ending, and then Leon Edwards lands the head kick out of nowhere. And for Grasso, it's not like this fight was as one-sided as that one was, but things weren't trending in the right direction for her up until she was able to take the back off of Shevchenko. But I do feel like Grasso is firmly in her prime right now, and I do think that we have seen her get better every single performance in and out, and we haven't seen that regression out of her just yet. So could Shevchenko go out there, put on the wrestling shoes, have a great top position, that top pressure, and be able to win this fight? I think she could, but I do think Grasso is going to be able to use that movement to really evade some of those takedowns of someone like Shevchenko.
I honestly have a hard time, and the more and more you go back and you watch some of these fights, Shevchenko just dusting everybody until she faces Jennifer Maia, and then there's a little bit of a chink in the armor. Then she goes out there and she's taking on Taila Santos, and it gets a little bit closer. And even though Santos lost her last fight, usually those title challengers that lose and then take a lot of time off tend to lose again after that. And she did lose to a really good fighter in Erin Blanchfield after winning the first round. So when I come back to this fight, yeah, I got Valentina Shevchenko to win it. Again, I like what I saw in the second round and the third round. Obviously, you like the stick-to-itiveness of Grasso to step on the pedal in that fourth round, to go out there and get the finish and win the belt and so on and so forth. But for me, I like Shevchenko with the takedowns. I think she can dictate those takedowns a little bit more. We'll see if the conditioning and the cardio are able to play out for Shevchenko, because it looked like she was starting to tire in the second round, in the third round, carried that over into the fourth round. And again, she's not... By saying she's not a spring chicken, she's 35 and 6 months old or so.
She's been fighting since she was like 14, though.
Yeah, she's been fighting since the early 2000s, if not earlier. So it's been a long and storied career for Valentina Shevchenko. So we are split on the pick in this one.
I hope we get one of the great crowd pops of all time for Alexa Grasso, though. I really do. Like on Independence Day for Mexico, like
in
she
Las
is a
Vegas,
Mexican champion. Yeah. But still, like, it's just those types of atmospheres that you really hope are set up to really justify this fighter and this champion. I saw the UFC gave her one of those cool belts like they gave Yair Rodriguez leading up to his title fighter unification.
That's up to the winner in this one, is it not?
What?
They get that cool, like, bedazzled belt.
I'm taking that. The one for Grasso looked pretty cool. So I just like the fact that they are starting to market, and hopefully we will see this, the more, like, individuality of the fighters, because it helps them a lot more promote themselves. So for Grasso, I like the cool belt. That has nothing to do with the fact that I think she's going to win this weekend. I just like the movement and the fact that, again, I think her movement not only can help her evade some of the strikes of Shevchenko, it's going to help her stay out of the way of some of the wrestling offense.
Only 11 fights on this card as of Sunday when we tape it. If anything changes, you can find more here at Fight Night Picks. Make sure you subscribe and keep it tuned in for all of that. 2 hours before the prelims, we have the show Question Mark Kicks. We offer up those final thoughts, previews, and predictions, and we get to talk about the week that was. If there's any weight misses or anything goes squirrely, you can always find us here at Craig Allen FNP, at Matt Allen FNP. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.